And Elvis Presley's granddaughter, Riley Keough, is opening up about her plans for Graceland and a promise to her mother.
Riley Keough's hands were shaking as she stared at the legal document that would change everything. Not from grief this time, not from the overwhelming weight of inheriting Graceland, but from pure, unfiltered rage. Because what she was reading wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was the systematic destruction of her mother's final wishes by the one person who was supposed to protect them. Her own grandmother, Priscilla Presley. The document was buried deep in a manila folder marked Estate Planning, Confidential. Hidden in a filing cabinet Riley almost didn't open. But when she did, she found a contract dated just 6 months before Lisa Marie's death. A contract that Priscilla had negotiated in secret. One that would have stripped Riley of nearly all control over Graceland's most sacred spaces. The upstairs rooms, Elvis's personal quarters, even his recording studio. All of it was going to be open to the public under Priscilla's management, against everything Lisa Marie had fought to preserve. Riley's phone call to her attorney that night lasted 3 hours, because this wasn't just about money or property rights. This was about watching her grandmother systematically erase her mother's voice from the family legacy. Lisa Marie had spent years, fighting to keep certain parts of Graceland private, to maintain some dignity for her father's memory. She'd made it crystal clear in dozens of conversations, in written instructions, in heated family meetings, that the upstairs would never become a tourist attraction. Never. But Priscilla had been planning the exact opposite behind her back. The contract details were devastating. Priscilla had already secured partnerships with entertainment companies, tourism boards, and media production houses. She'd negotiated filming rights for reality shows, documentary crews, and even social media influencers to have access to Elvis's most intimate spaces. The bedroom where he died, the bathroom where he spent his final moments, the private study where he wrote his most personal thoughts. All of it was going to be monetized, packaged, and sold to the highest bidder. And Lisa Marie never knew. Because that's what made Riley explode with fury. It wasn't just the betrayal itself, it was the calculated deception. Priscilla had used Lisa's declining health, her struggles with addiction, her emotional vulnerability after her son Benjamin's death, to work around her completely. While Lisa was grieving, while she was fighting her own demons, Priscilla was in boardrooms signing contracts that would undo everything Lisa held sacred. The attorney's voice was grim when he explained the legal implications. If Lisa Marie hadn't amended the trust in 2016, if she hadn't specifically given Riley control of these decisions, Priscilla's secret contracts would have been legally binding. Riley would have inherited Graceland only to watch it be turned into exactly the kind of exploitation circus that Elvis himself had feared, that Lisa Marie had nightmares about. But here's what pushed Riley over the edge. The signatures on the contracts weren't just Priscilla's. They were forged versions of Lisa Marie's signature on preliminary agreements. Priscilla had been telling business partners that Lisa was on board with the plans, that the family was united in opening up the private quarters. She'd been using Lisa's name, Lisa's authority, to negotiate deals that Lisa would have killed to stop. When Riley confronted the family attorney who'd worked with them for decades, his face went white. He'd seen the forged documents too, but he'd been told by Priscilla that Lisa had approved them verbally, that the signatures were just a formality. He'd trusted the matriarch of the family to tell the truth about her own daughter's wishes. That trust had been weaponized against Lisa Marie's memory. The moment Riley realized the full scope of what had happened, she didn't just get angry, she got strategic. Because this wasn't going to be a quiet family dispute settled behind closed doors. This was war. Priscilla had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She'd betrayed not just Riley, not just Lisa Marie, but Elvis himself. She'd tried to turn his sanctuary into a sideshow. Riley's first call wasn't to Priscilla. It wasn't to the media. It was to her legal team with one simple instruction: find everything. Every contract, every meeting, every conversation, every email. Because if Priscilla thought she could manipulate the Presley legacy from the shadows, she was about to learn that Riley Keough wasn't going to be the quiet, compliant granddaughter she'd expected. The betrayal was unforgivable, but Riley's response was going to be unstoppable. And Priscilla had no idea what was coming. What Riley uncovered next would have destroyed any remaining respect she had for her grandmother. Because those forged contracts weren't just a desperate mistake. They were part of a decade-long pattern of manipulation that had been destroying her mother from the inside out. Riley's investigation started with phone records. Lisa Marie's final months had been filled with mysterious calls to attorneys, financial advisors, and estate planners that Riley had never heard of. When she tracked down these professionals, the story they told was chilling. Priscilla had been presenting herself as Lisa's power of attorney in situations where she had no legal authority whatsoever. She'd been making financial decisions, signing preliminary agreements, and even redirecting correspondence meant for Lisa Marie directly to herself. One attorney broke down in tears during Riley's interview with him. He'd been handling what he thought were Lisa's instructions to liquidate certain Elvis memorabilia for quick cash. Priscilla had told him Lisa was too emotionally unstable to handle the transactions herself, that she needed her mother to step in and protect the family assets. The Sales, believing he was helping a grieving daughter preserve her father's legacy. Instead, he'd been manipulated into selling priceless Elvis artifacts that Lisa Marie had specifically wanted to keep in the family forever. But the financial betrayal was just the beginning. Riley discovered that Priscilla had been systematically isolating Lisa from longtime family advisors, the people who actually knew Lisa's true wishes for Graceland. She'd convinced Lisa that these advisors were trying to take advantage of her, that only family could be trusted. Then Priscilla became the filter through which all major decisions had to pass. The most devastating discovery came from Lisa's personal assistant, a woman who'd worked with the family for over 15 years. She'd kept detailed records of Lisa's actual conversations about Graceland's future, recordings that directly contradicted everything Priscilla had been telling business partners and legal teams. In these recordings, Lisa's voice was clear and strong. She wanted the upstairs to remain completely private. She wanted Elvis's personal effects to stay exactly where they were. She wanted Graceland to be a place of reverence, not a reality show set. But every time Lisa tried to formalize these wishes legally, Priscilla would intervene. She'd suggest waiting until Lisa was in a better headspace. She'd recommend different attorneys who happened to be more sympathetic to Priscilla's vision of maximizing the estate's commercial potential. She'd create delays and complications that kept Lisa's true intentions from ever becoming legally binding. The personal assistant revealed something that made Riley's blood run cold. In the final year of Lisa's life, she'd tried multiple times to meet privately with estate attorneys without Priscilla present. Every single time Priscilla had found out and showed up uninvited, claiming Lisa had asked her to be there. Lisa had become so frustrated that she'd started having secret phone conversations from her car, trying to find legal representation that Priscilla couldn't manipulate or control. That's when Riley understood the true scope of the betrayal. Her mother hadn't just been fighting addiction and grief in her final years. She'd been fighting a psychological war with her own mother, a woman who was supposed to be her greatest support system, but had instead become her greatest obstacle to protecting Elvis's legacy. Riley tracked down 3 different law firms that Lisa had consulted in secret. Each one told the same story. Lisa Marie Presley had been desperate to create ironclad legal protections for Graceland's private spaces, but every attempt had been sabotaged by family interference and emotional manipulation. One attorney admitted he'd stopped working with Lisa because the family dynamics were so toxic, he couldn't determine who actually had the authority to make decisions. The financial records told an even darker story. Priscilla had been using Lisa's emotional instability as justification to make unilateral decisions about licensing deals, merchandise contracts, and media partnerships. She'd signed agreements worth millions of dollars, always claiming she was protecting Lisa from having to handle the stress of business decisions. But the contracts consistently favored Priscilla's vision of commercializing every aspect of Elvis's private life. Riley found emails between Priscilla and entertainment executives discussing Lisa like she was an obstacle to be managed rather than a daughter to be protected. One email chain was particularly brutal. Priscilla had written to a documentary producer that Lisa's sentimental attachment to keeping certain areas private was financially irresponsible, and that she was working to help Lisa see the bigger picture about monetizing the estate's full potential. The betrayal wasn't just about money or control. It was about erasing Lisa Marie Presley's voice from her own father's legacy. Priscilla had systematically undermined her daughter's authority, manipulated her vulnerability, and stolen her right to protect what she held most sacred. When Riley finally pieced together the full timeline of deception, she realized that her mother's final years hadn't just been marked by personal struggles. They'd been marked by a constant battle against someone who was supposed to love and protect her, but was instead working to strip away everything she was fighting to preserve. The evidence was overwhelming, documented, and absolutely unforgivable. Riley didn't call ahead, she didn't schedule a meeting. She drove straight to Priscilla's house with a folder full of evidence and 27 years of suppressed anger ready to explode. Because when you discover that your grandmother has been systematically destroying your mother's legacy while pretending to protect it, there's only one conversation that matters. The one where you lay all the cards on the table and watch someone's carefully constructed lies crumble in real time. Priscilla answered the door, expecting a routine family visit. What she got was Riley throwing the forged contracts onto her coffee table and asking one simple question: "How long did you think you could get away with this?" The confrontation that followed wasn't just a granddaughter confronting her grandmother. It was the truth finally catching up with years of manipulation. And Priscilla's response revealed exactly who she really was underneath the polished public image. Her first reaction wasn't shock or denial. It was anger. Priscilla was furious that Riley had been snooping around in family business, that she'd been talking to attorneys and staff members without permission. She accused Riley of being ungrateful, of not understanding the sacrifices she'd made to build the Presley legacy into what it was today. She claimed that everything she'd done was to protect the family's financial future, that Lisa Marie had been too emotionally unstable to make rational decisions about the estate. But Riley was ready for every excuse. She pulled out the recorded conversations where Lisa explicitly stated her wishes for Graceland. She showed Priscilla the emails where she'd called Lisa's desire for privacy financially irresponsible. She presented evidence of the forged signatures, the manipulated meetings, the systematic isolation of Lisa from independent legal counsel. That's when Priscilla's carefully maintained composure completely shattered. She started screaming about how Riley didn't understand what it was like to carry the responsibility of the Presley name for decades, how she sacrificed her own life to turn Elvis into a global brand worth hundreds of millions of dollars, how Lisa Marie had been selfish and short-sighted, more concerned with sentiment than with securing the family's financial future, how Riley was just a spoiled granddaughter who'd inherited everything without earning any of it. But the most revealing moment came when Priscilla justified the forged signatures. She claimed that Lisa had given her verbal permission for everything, that the signatures were just a formality, that she was simply protecting Lisa from having to deal with stressful business decisions during her difficult final years. When Riley pointed out that this was fraud, that verbal permission doesn't authorize forging someone's signature, Priscilla's response was chilling. "I was protecting this family's legacy when you were still playing dress-up. I know what's best for Graceland better than Lisa ever did." That single sentence revealed everything. This wasn't about protecting Lisa or honoring Elvis. This was about Priscilla's belief that she owned the Presley legacy more than the actual Presley family members, that her decades of management gave her more authority than Lisa Marie's position as Elvis's daughter or Riley's inheritance as Lisa's chosen successor. The confrontation escalated when Riley demanded that Priscilla immediately contact every business partner and entertainment company to cancel the secret contracts. Priscilla refused, claiming that backing out of the deals would cost the estate millions in penalties and lost revenue. She accused Riley of being naive about the business realities of managing a global brand. Riley's response was devastating in its simplicity. These contracts are based on forged signatures and fraudulent representations. They're not legally binding, and if you don't cancel them, I'll have no choice but to pursue criminal charges for fraud and elder abuse. The word criminal changed everything, because up until that moment, Priscilla had been treating this like a family dispute that could be managed with emotional manipulation and guilt trips. But when Riley made it clear that she was prepared to involve law enforcement, that this betrayal had crossed into actual criminal territory, Priscilla realized she wasn't dealing with the compliant granddaughter she'd expected. The meeting ended with Priscilla making one final, desperate attempt to maintain control. She threatened to go public with family secrets, to tell the media about Lisa Marie's struggles with addiction and mental health, to destroy the family's reputation if Riley didn't back down. She claimed that pursuing this confrontation would hurt Elvis's legacy more than any business deal ever could. Riley's response was the moment she truly stepped into her power as the head of the Presley family. She looked at her grandmother, the woman who'd helped raise her, and said something that ended their relationship forever. "You already destroyed Mom's legacy. You used her pain against her, stole her voice, and betrayed everything she fought to protect. If you think I'm going to let you do the same thing to Elvis's memory, you don't know me at all." When Riley walked out of that house, she wasn't just leaving behind a toxic family relationship. She was declaring war on anyone who thought they could manipulate the Presley legacy for personal gain. Riley's revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It was surgical, strategic, and absolutely devastating to everything Priscilla had built over the past decade. Because when you've been systematically betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you, the most powerful response isn't anger, it's action. Within 48 hours of their confrontation, Riley had terminated every single contract that Priscilla had negotiated without proper authorization. The reality show deals, the documentary partnerships, the social media access agreements, all of it was canceled, with a simple legal letter citing fraudulent misrepresentation. The entertainment companies that had been salivating over access to Elvis's private quarters suddenly found themselves locked out completely. But Riley didn't stop there. She systematically removed Priscilla from every advisory role, every decision-making position, every source of influence over Graceland's operations. The woman who had controlled the Presley legacy for decades suddenly found herself with no more authority than any other visitor to the estate. The most brutal part of Riley's response was how she handled the financial aspect of Priscilla's betrayal. Every penny that had been generated from the questionable licensing deals, every dollar that had come from exploiting Lisa Marie's vulnerability, was redirected into a foundation dedicated to preserving Elvis's true legacy. Not the commercialized version that Priscilla had been pushing, but the authentic story of a man who valued privacy, spirituality, and genuine human connection. Riley also made sure that everyone in the entertainment industry knew exactly what had happened. Not through public statements or media interviews, but through quiet conversations with the right people. Word spread quickly that the Presley estate was no longer going to be the easy target for exploitation that it had been under Priscilla's influence. The transformation at Graceland itself was immediate and profound. Tours became more respectful, more focused on Elvis's artistry and humanity, rather than sensational details about his private life. The upstairs remained completely off-limits, exactly as Lisa Marie had wanted. Riley established new protocols that ensured every decision about Elvis's legacy would honor his memory rather than simply maximize profits. Priscilla's response to being completely shut out of the family business was predictable. She tried to rally public support, suggesting that Riley was being disrespectful to the woman who had built the Presley brand. But the evidence of her betrayal was too overwhelming, and the entertainment industry had already moved on to the next opportunity. The most satisfying aspect of Riley's victory wasn't just that she'd stopped Priscilla's exploitation of the family legacy. It was that she'd finally given Lisa Marie the voice that had been stolen from her. Every decision Riley made honored her mother's true wishes, the ones that had been ignored and manipulated for years. Riley Keough didn't just inherit Graceland, she reclaimed it from someone who had forgotten that legacy isn't about control or profit. It's about truth, respect, and honoring the people who came before you. And sometimes, the greatest act of love for your family is making sure their real story gets told, even when it means going to war with the people who were supposed to protect it. If this story of family betrayal and ultimate justice resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more untold stories behind the biggest celebrity scandals. What do you think? Was Riley's revenge justified, or did she go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's discuss.